Night City Stories, Chapter 5-2. V started following Evelyn back out to the hallway when Evelyn said,
"Follow me. Got something for you. Should help you plan. Brain dance from Konpeki Plaza."
How's a brain dance supposed to help? Need facts, not thrills.
Replied V with a little discontent in her voice. Evelyn chuckled at V's cluelessness and asked rhetorically,
"Think BDs are only good for fondling virtual tits? Jacking off to in those boxes?"
before elaborating.
No. It can be a very useful tool. It's good for analyzing details, human perception, even boosted.
They called through a dressing room where two Moxes hung out in front of a long counter with enough stools and mirrors for 5 people. A golden mannequin, naked and proud like a statue, stared at V from the left corner. And on the right side of the room was a packed, dark wardrobe. Evelyn led V through a doorway beside the wardrobe while explaining.
So what's on the table?
Yorinobu's suite. The glorious interior. You'll need to locate the relic yourself. Hope I grabbed enough detail to make that possible.
Hold up. Mean to say you recorded this?
Asked V, surprised at Evelyn's resourcefulness. At this point, V was too focused in the conversation to have kept her sense of direction. She felt even more lost as they descended a dark stairway. Evelyn turned to face V and regarded her under a scrutinized stare. She answered V's question and asked,
BD rec implant. Why, you object?
Supposed to be Yorinobu's pad on the tape. Means you were inside. You, know each other?
V was impressed that Evelyn had met the famous Yorinobu. A proud smirk stretched at the corners of Evelyn's mouth, and her body language was marked by a brief vulnerability that came and went quickly. She explained,
"How else could I get all this intel? I know him pretty well, actually. We have an arrangement. Strictly business. Suits us both, I think."
Let's see this brain dance.
Said V as her interest grew.
Judy'll help. She's a Mox too. Besides, we go back, years.
Replied Evelyn, continuing down the stairs. And V immediately felt the oppressive heat that lingered in the basement. The running electronic hardware sat behind a red door and a metallic mesh wall. The mesh wall allowed airflow to and from the electronics. Before they entered through the double doors, Evelyn stopped again, making sure she had V's undivided attention. There was a seriousness in her voice. It was threatening in a subtle way, like the warnings of an overprotective mother. She said to V,
"V, this is important. Judy's always been there for me. Always helped out. I trust her. But she's a Mox, not the latest member of your crew. Try not to forget. So you'll be a good girl, tread lightly, and keep that tongue on a leash."
After Evelyn's comment, they filed through the open doors, and V, trying to release some of the tension, casually replied,
Relax. Believe it or not, I'm no stranger to tact. In biz or life.
They ran around a corner, passing several rows of servers that worked tirelessly under faint red light. The place was a techie's dream. Powerful systems and computers ran quietly in the background of a well-lit medical bed. There was an absent shell of a woman occupying the dark room with one boot resting on a desk. Her eyes were closed, but she wasn't asleep. She was preoccupied in her mind. The eyes flashed open when Evelyn cleared her throat to get her attention. The small electronic headset the woman wore over her forehead like some sort of cyber crown doused her eyes in electric blue lights. The woman regarded Evelyn and said,
"Hey, there you are."
A computer monitor came alive next to her and strings of text climbed up.
"This is V. She's here for that BD role. And V, this is Judy. Best brain dance editor I know."
Introduced Evelyn. Her voice was quoted sweet with fondness and pride as she introduced Judy.
Enough already. Gonna make me barf.
Judy replied passively, and although her face was in darkness, it wasn't hard to think that she was blushing. V, who had noticed Judy's hardware, added to the compliments by saying,
Sensory SIG amps, acoustic and emotive wave monitors. Top shelf hardware.
Yeah, most of it's customized. Only thing factory are the casings.
replied Judy.
Mod all this yourself?
Asked V, already knowing the answer.
What do you think?
Retorted Judy, a little conceited. V extended the shop talk by commenting,
Expression translator. Fuyutsuki, right? Thought the matrices on that series were fucked up.
With much interest, Judy explained.
They were, but swapping out matrices is simple. And this was the only model that'd support additional scanware.
Once again, Evelyn cleared her throat.
Alright. Compiled your BDF.
Said Judy to Evelyn.
What do you think? Will it do?
Evelyn asked.
Still pretty raw. But yeah, ought to do.
Replied Judy, swinging her foot off the desk.
Mm-hmm. V needs to get deep inside. That's most important.
Evelyn added.
So, let's calibrate. Tune it to her.
Judy said. Both V and Evelyn followed Judy to another desk. This one sat in a corner in front of a pink neon Lizzie's bar sign and right across the medical chair. The computer screens on her desk came to life, and for the first time, V got a good look at Judy. A letter M tattooed on her neck showed that she belonged to the Mox gang. Though for a Mox, Judy was dressed conservatively in a black overall with a studded belt and a crop top. Many tattoos decorated her light brown skin. Her green hair with purple tips fell and covered the right side of her face, exposing the left shaved side where a small metallic augmentation sat near her left ear. She was a short and slim woman with dark, wide eyes that could easily be misconstrued for innocence.
Believe me, I've dealt with worse. Should see the jig street porn we gotta contend with sometimes.
Judy explained while staring at one of her many screens.
So, we drop V inside? Let her look, let her rummage around, right?
Evelyn asked curiously, filling out of depth with Judy's technical explanations. Judy took her attention off the screen and asked V.
How about it, V? Raw brain dance. Ever taken a dip before?
Look, I'm no BD virgin, but the raw stuff, uncharted territory.
V replied honestly. Judy alleviated V's uneasiness by replying,
Relax. I'll explain everything. It's less complicated than it sounds. Sit down, settle in, and we'll get you going.
V went to the medical chair in the middle of the room while Judy grabbed the device from a drawer behind her desk. V sat down. For a moment, it felt like she was back at the Ripper dock, waiting for Vic to start doing his thing. Except that this time it was Judy. Parts of V enjoyed having Judy in her face more than Vic. Judy came closer and placed an electronic device on V's head. It was the same type of device that Judy was wearing earlier. Parts of the device hung in front of V's face and protruded on both sides like sunglasses that were way too spaced apart. She watched Judy return to her desk.
Gotta create your sensory
said
profile
Judy.
first.
Although a bit nervous, V resigned herself to the task and said,
Okay, hit me. Just promise me it won't hurt.
It won't. Not this time.
Judy replied with confidence, or what V thought was a joke that went over her head. She was too busy in her uneasiness.
Now sit still, look at me. Gonna run the analysis soft. Should feel a slight tingling.
Judy explained. V moaned at the sensation that coursed through her skull. It felt like the touch of cold phantom fingers intruding through her brain. Evelyn paced the room restlessly as Judy continued saying,
Okay, now let's set the optics and other sensory sigs. Look smack into these two screens. Pretend it's an eye exam.
V thought about asking if she needed to calibrate the device every time before use, but instead asked,
Get a lot of requests like this?
Judy was happy to explain.
All the time. But it's usually stuff the girls scroll at the club. I take that and do some routine porn tuning.
Crank up the orgasms?
V asked, curious.
More like, cut out all the other shit. Fucking's business as usual for these guys. Their minds wander to grocery lists, spouses' birthdays, late bills, whatever.
Explained Judy. Judy
But even
added,
then, you can refigure things, mold the emotions into something unique, unforgettable. So, I can't complain. One more sec. Need to get the pain receptor limiters in. Okay. All set. need to test your profile first. Tossing in a sample BD. You can use it to get to know the editor. Now let me see.
She looked through her system for a sample suitable for V. Evelyn, running low on patience, asked Judy.
Can't you just use my recording? Why are we wasting time?
It was a question with an obvious answer, but Judy explained.
So we don't risk our necks. Size won't take a sec. Got something here. Should be perfect.
Boot it up.
V gave her the go-ahead.
Let me give you the tailored version first. Let you get your bearings. Then we'll jump into editing mode.
Judy said, then she counted down.
Be diving in 3, 2...
Blue flashing lights from the device glowed and grew in front of V's vision. Then for a moment, darkness.